Thank you very much for joining us today for this KBRA clip. I'm Joan Feldbaum-Vidra, and I head up KBRA's Sovereigns Rating Unit. And here with me is Corinne Hill, who heads up KBRA's Energy Corporate sector. We're here today to discuss the federal government's recent decision to proceed with the Trans Mountain Pipeline project after careful study and deliberation. Corinne and I published a research piece recently called KBRA Zooms In on Canada Energy. About a month ago, I think we published it, and it had quite a bit of foresight. In that piece, we noted that public policy is increasingly being the fulcrum that could tip the balance towards a more positive direction for the energy sector. I also want to note that KBRA has been doing a lot more research and work on Canada. We've published a sovereign rating, several bank ratings, and a lot of work on the energy sector. Thank you so much for joining us. Corinne, can you update us on why this development regarding the pipeline is so important?
Sure. The key bottleneck is Alberta is a landlocked province where most of the production, there's no pipelines that extend across the country. Oil production also has been increasing, which is a good thing. However, storage has gotten full. This reinforces the need for structural changes and more pipeline capacity. This is one of the main structural weaknesses of the sector. There has always been differentials between Canadian oil prices and WTI or other oil grades. However, the differential got to a record high of 46 Canadian dollars in October of 2018. The Alberta government stepped in and imposed production cuts 2 months later. And as a result, the differential did narrow, at least in the short run. Alberta also purchased rail cars, which is another positive intervention. Joan, why do you think this is so important?
Well, we've seen here quite a few episodes of government intervention that have been really trying to push forward a policy development or a policy ambition. We don't, of course, comment on what's right or wrong, and we know that these decisions are often very, very politically difficult. What's important here is we do see government resolve quite firm to solve an important structural impediment in the economy. Corinne, it would be great to update our viewers on what the history is behind these recent developments.
Sure. Following the inertia in the development of the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion, which actually transverses Alberta and goes to the port of British Columbia, the federal government actually bought the pipeline from a private owner who was having trouble getting some of these permits.
Quite a bit of intervention.
Yes. And they did this to expedite the process and navigate the political constraints, including Indigenous and environmental groups. On June 18th, Trudeau gave a second green light to this expansion. But this time, he's making some accommodations to those two groups. For example, they said that they would protect the killer whale and other fish groups, and also they will allocate all the profits from the pipeline to green projects. Joan, what are your thoughts about how this will move forward?
Hard to comment on the precise timing, but I just want to reinforce the idea that it certainly seems that we're on more solid footing, that this is much more likely to move forward than not, and that the government resolve is there. Also want to highlight that this isn't really the first time at all that a government in Canada, and particularly this government, has been quite proactive and innovative in its approach. For example, the government pretty recently announced measures to offer training to the economy in light of the need to adapt to technological change, which of course we know is a big disruptor. The government and its agencies and institutions are extremely sound and vigilant about managing policy and macro policy in general. For example, they have been very vigilant about mitigating risks in the housing sector where there have been pockets of overheating. And how do we view this in terms of the sector?
We view the events as very positive for the oil sector. We think, though, the provincial and federal government have to continue to keep trying to solve the structural problems in the long run. The government wants to support energy, to position Canada as a strong energy exporter, and to find new markets for its oil. Joan, what is the impact on the Canadian economy?
It's clearly significant. Oil accounts for about 20% of Canada's exports. However, and it's very important for the economy, no question, when you have that kind of level, and especially for the province of Alberta, which is much more concentrated, of course. KBRA has a AAA rating, though, on Canada, and that underscores a very, very high level of resiliency and also the extensive diversification of the economy. About 75% of the labor force of employment is employed in the services sector, so there's quite a bit of diversification. Canada is also the 10th largest economy in the world. Again, another example of how diversified it is. Canada is expected to grow about 1.8% a year. That's actually better than quite a few of its peers in the AAA range. And what do we think about Canadian energy corporates?
Well, we wanted to monitor the credit quality of Canadian energy companies, so we created a model portfolio of 60 Canadian energy companies. Overall, the credit quality of the model portfolio has improved measurably since the last energy recession. EBITDA rose 80% over the last 2 years, and leverage also declined from 2.5 to 2.3 in the recent year. However, it's still not as low as it was before the energy crisis at 1.4, so there's still some work to do in the sector. The rebound in metrics reminds us that there's a wide range of outcomes and a wide range of risk appetites. Lumping all similar companies into one results in the proverbial babies thrown out with the bathwater. In the next downturn, some companies will adapt to the changes and other companies will not. Joan, Kroll is focusing more on ESG factors, given rising investor interest. How do these recent developments relate?
Well, the government pledges that this recent decision on the pipeline is environmentally and socially friendly, actually, because primarily it should increase employment prospects. Certain groups, of course, do not agree with that and think that the costs outweigh the benefits of the move. In terms of ESG metrics, just want to state that, of course, we look at all credit metrics when we do our deep dive into any type of credit analysis, including we look at ESG factors that are relevant to the analysis. Thank you very much for viewing this KBRA clip. Corinne and I would like to thank you very much. And we'd also like to invite you to visit our website, www.kbra.com. All of our research is complimentary, and there you can find research on banks, the corporate, sovereigns, and the energy sector. All of our research, once again, is complimentary. Thank you very much.